The celestial nomad drifted through the void between Proxima Colony and Earth's outer settlements, her weathered hull telling stories of 3 decades traversing the solar highways. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the bridge viewport, watching distant stars glimmer against the backdrop of endless space. The ship's gentle vibration beneath her feet was as familiar as her own heartbeat. "Captain, we've got another glitch in the quantum detection array," called out Rodriguez from his engineering station. The stocky engineer's dark eyes crinkled with amusement. "Though honestly, when don't we?" Sarah smiled, running her hand along a worn control panel. The celestial nomad was far from the most sophisticated vessel in Earth's merchant fleet. While newer ships boasted cutting-edge AI navigation and quantum-mapped sensor arrays, the Nomad relied on tried-and-true technology that had served humanity's early ventures into space. "How bad is it this time?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Nothing critical. The backup analog systems are running fine. Actually better than the main array," Rodriguez replied, his fingers dancing across his console with practiced ease. "Sometimes I think this old girl just prefers the classics." Dr. Maya Patel, their medical officer and resident scientist, looked up from her datapad. "You know, there's something to be said for technological redundancy. These hybrid systems might be considered outdated, but they're incredibly resilient." Before Sarah could respond, their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from Zara, their sensor specialist. "Captain, I'm picking up some unusual readings from the Epsilon sector. They don't match any known signature in our database." The bridge crew fell silent as Zara's hands flew across her console, bringing up a holographic display of the surrounding space. Strange energy patterns appeared as crimson threads weaving through the familiar blue markers of normal space traffic. "Whatever it is, it's big," Zara continued, her voice tense. "And it's moving fast. The energy output, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Sarah leaned forward, studying the display. 20 years of deep space shipping had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now every one of them was screaming danger. "Send the data through the old electromagnetic scanner. Sometimes new isn't always better." Zara complied, routing the sensor data through the ship's backup systems. The resulting image was less detailed, but revealed something the quantum sensors had missed: a massive distortion in the local space-time fabric, like a predator's shadow in deep water. "Multiple objects emerging from faster-than-light travel," Zara announced, her voice steady despite the tension. "Their technology. It's beyond anything in our records." The bridge viewport filled with light as dozens of vessels materialized in the distance. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, sleek, crystalline shapes that seemed to bend the light around them, making them appear almost liquid in the starlight. "They're not broadcasting any recognition signals," Communications Officer Chen Wei reported, his hands moving across his station. "Not on any standard frequencies." "Wait." His eyes widened. "We're receiving something now." The voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfectly translated Earth Standard, though there was something inherently wrong about its tone. Too smooth, too perfect. "Attention primitive vessels. This space is now under the authority of the Ascendant Collective. Your technological development has been deemed insufficient for autonomous governance. Submit to our guidance or face immediate neutralization." Sarah felt her crew's eyes turn to her as the message repeated. The alien ships were moving with precise coordination, their formation suggesting both overwhelming confidence and military precision. They were heading straight for the nearest colony. "Rodriguez," Sarah said quietly, "shut down all quantum systems. Every single one. Right now." The engineer looked startled, but didn't hesitate. One by one, the ship's advanced systems went dark, leaving them running on what most modern vessels would consider emergency backup technology. "Captain," Maya asked, her voice careful, "what are you thinking?" Sarah's lips curved into a slight smile as she watched the alien armada through the now simple optical viewport. "They called us primitive. They're expecting quantum signatures, AI responses, modern defense systems. But sometimes, She patted the ship's old control panel affectionately. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The celestial nomad hung silent in space, her outdated systems humming quietly, invisible to the sophisticated sensors of the passing alien fleet. To them, she probably appeared as nothing more than a piece of space debris, too primitive to be worth their attention. That would be their first mistake. Hidden strengths. The cargo hold of the celestial nomad had transformed into an improvised war room. Holographic displays were replaced with paper star charts spread across storage crates, and the crew huddled around them, their faces illuminated by simple LED lamps. Their ships follow perfect geometric patterns, Maya observed, marking the alien fleet movements with a grease pencil. Almost too perfect, like they're running on pure mathematics without any human or alien intuition. Rodriguez nodded, his hand stained with engine grease. Their whole system seems automated. I've been analyzing their energy signatures using our old spectrum analyzer. Their ships pump out so much quantum noise that they're practically blind to anything operating below a certain technological threshold. Like us, Sarah said, studying the marked patterns. The celestial nomad had spent the last 48 hours shadowing the ascended fleet, using nothing but passive sensors and visual observation. Their old-style nuclear engines, usually considered a liability, produced heat signatures so basic that they disappeared into the background radiation. Zara pointed to several marked positions on the chart. They've already taken control of 3 automated mining outposts. But look here, they completely missed the old-style colony on Europa, the one still using hydroelectric power and basic radio. Because it's too primitive to register on their sensors, Chen Wei finished, understanding dawning on his face. They're looking for quantum signatures, AI patterns, advanced power sources, and missing everything else, Sarah concluded. She straightened up, her mind racing with possibilities. Rodriguez, what's the status on those modifications I asked for? The engineer grinned, pulling out a tablet, one running on ancient transistor technology rather than quantum circuits. We've stripped out every quantum sensor and replaced them with analog alternatives. Radar, radio, even restored the old optical targeting system. We're about as high-tech as a submarine from the 21st century. Better yet, Maya added, I've been studying their transmissions. Their language is perfect, too perfect. They're using AI translation matrices, expecting responses in kind, but their systems stumble when dealing with human irregularities, slang, emotion. Sarah felt a plan forming. So they've built their entire invasion strategy around countering our most advanced technology, without considering everything that came before, everything that got us to the stars in the first place. The crew gathered closer as she began outlining her idea. The celestial nomad might not be able to match the aliens' firepower, but they had something the Ascendants hadn't counted on. Centuries of human innovation, layer upon layer of technological development, each building on what came before. Chen Wei, start broadcasting warnings to all colonies. Tell them to power down their quantum tech. Switch to backup systems, older alternatives. Rodriguez, I want you to adapt our cargo handling equipment into something they won't expect. And Maya. Sarah turned to their science officer with a glint in her eye. How much do you remember about basic chemistry? Enough to know that some of the simplest reactions can be the most explosive, Maya replied with a knowing smile. Over the next several hours, the celestial nomad underwent a transformation. Modern sensors were replaced with analog alternatives. Quantum computers were shut down in favor of old silicon processors. Their advanced targeting systems were exchanged for manually operated turrets guided by optical sights and human reflexes. Through their basic radio network, they began receiving responses from colonies and other ships that had followed their example. The Ascendant's sophisticated jamming had no effect on simple amplitude modulation broadcasts, allowing a hidden network of resistance to grow right under their sensors. They think they've blinded us by shutting down our advanced communications, Sarah said, watching her crew work with determined efficiency. Instead, they've forced us to remember our roots, to rely on human ingenuity rather than artificial intelligence, to trust our instincts instead of quantum calculations. A signal came in from one of the outer colonies, using Morse code, of all things. The message was simple: ready to help. Tell us how. Sarah smiled, touching the worn metal wall of her ship. The celestial nomad might be considered obsolete by modern standards, but she was about to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their most advanced technology. It was in their ability to adapt, to improvise, and to turn their perceived weaknesses into advantages. The Ascendants had dismissed them as primitive. They were about to learn that primitive didn't mean powerless. It meant unpredictable. It meant resourceful. And most importantly, it meant dangerous. The art of deception. The Ascendant supply fleet moved like liquid mercury through space, 30 ships strong. Their crystalline hulls reflected starlight in hypnotic patterns as they transferred resources to their main invasion force. They maintained perfect formation, their movements guided by quantum algorithms beyond human comprehension. They never saw the celestial nomad coming. All systems dark, Rodriguez reported from his jury-rigged engineering station. The ship's interior was lit only by red emergency lights, their glow reflecting off the condensation that had formed when they'd switched to minimal life support. We're running cold as space itself. Sarah stood at the manual helm, her hands resting on the physical control yokes that hadn't been used in years. Status on the package, Maya. In the cargo hold, Maya made a final adjustment to what had once been the ship's waste reclamation system. Ready. Though I still can't believe we're basically throwing garbage at them. Not garbage, Rodriguez corrected through the intercom, pride in his voice. Carefully engineered chaos. The package was their secret weapon. Thousands of small metallic spheres, each containing a mixture of common chemical compounds found in any cargo ship's maintenance supplies. Compounds that, when combined, produced reactions that played havoc with sophisticated sensors. Zara, visual confirmation. Sarah asked. Clear line of sight to their starboard flanks, Zara responded, her eye pressed to an actual telescope. They're completely focused on their supply transfer. No indication they've spotted us. Sarah took a deep breath. Everything hinged on timing. The Ascendant ships were protected by energy shields that could vaporize any modern weapon. But those shields were calibrated for high-energy attacks, not simple physical objects moving at relatively low speeds. Launch the first wave, she ordered. Maya activated their improvised delivery system. With barely a sound, hundreds of spheres drifted into space, their trajectories calculated using nothing more complex than Newtonian physics. The Ascendant's sophisticated detection systems, designed to spot energy weapons and quantum signatures, completely ignored what appeared to be random space debris. The spheres entered the supply fleet's formation. Then, triggered by simple pressure sensors, they began to rupture. The reaction was immediate and spectacular. Clouds of metallic particles and reactive chemicals spread through space, creating a storm of interference that played havoc with the aliens' quantum-based sensors. Their perfect formation began to waver as ships lost contact with each other. Second wave, Sarah commanded. This time, the spheres contained something even simpler. Paint. Not the modern smart paint used on spacecraft, but old-fashioned, oil-based paint that would stick to anything and conduct electricity in the most inconvenient ways. The Ascendant ship's crystalline hulls began to take on a distinctly less impressive appearance as globs of paint adhered to their sensor arrays and communication nodes. Their coordinated movements became increasingly erratic. They're launching defensive drones, Chenwei reported, watching through binoculars. The alien vessels released swarms of autonomous units, their advanced AI seeking threats that matched their tactical databases. Perfect. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Rodriguez. The engineer threw a switch, activating their third surprise. The celestial nomad's cargo cranes extended, trailing what looked like fishing nets, because that's exactly what they were, salvaged from Europa's underwater mining operations and modified with strips of copper wire. The alien drones, programmed to avoid sophisticated threats, flew straight into the simple nets. Their anti-collision systems, calibrated for high-speed space combat, failed to register the primitive hazard until they were hopelessly entangled. Multiple ships showing signs of sensor failure, Zara reported with growing excitement. They're having to switch to visual navigation. Their formation is breaking down completely. But the Ascendants weren't finished. One of their largest ships turned toward the Celestial Nomad's position, its weapon systems charging. Sarah had been counting on this reaction. Now Maya released their final surprise. Dozens of small mirrors, literally ripped from the ship's bathrooms and crew quarters. As the alien vessel fired its energy weapon, the mirrors caught and reflected the beam, scattering it in countless directions. The Ascendants' own perfect targeting worked against them as their ships were caught in the crossfire of their reflected weapons. Chaos erupted among the supply fleet. Ships collided as their automated systems failed, their perfect coordination shattered by the introduction of random variables their quantum computers couldn't process fast enough. Some began emergency jumps to faster than light speed, their calculations thrown off by the simple interference surrounding them. Send the signal, Sarah ordered Chenwei. All frequencies, just like we planned. The communication officer began broadcasting their message using everything from radio waves to light signals. Detailed instructions on how to disrupt Ascendant technology using the simplest of means. Across the sector, other ships and colonies would now know that humanity's primitive technology wasn't a weakness, it was a weapon. Chain reaction. News of the Celestial Nomad's victory spread through the colonies like wildfire. Transmitted through a web of antiquated communication systems. The Ascendant's quantum networks might control the main channels, but they couldn't monitor every radio frequency, every Morse code transmission, every flickering light signal passed between ships in the night. Sarah stood in a makeshift command center on Europa Colony, surrounded by representatives from a dozen different outposts and vessels. The room hummed with the sound of vintage computer fans and analog radar displays. Modern holographic projectors have been replaced with physical models and paper maps. The Ascendants are adapting, Maya reported, pointing to marked positions on the star chart. They're expanding their sensor ranges, trying to detect even the simplest energy signatures. But that's actually working against them. The more sensitive they make their systems, the more our low-tech interference affects them. Rodriguez nodded, spreading out diagrams of his latest modifications. They're like someone with enhanced hearing trying to fight in a room full of whispers. Every little noise becomes a potential threat. They can't filter out what's important anymore. Reports were coming in from across human space. A mining ship near Saturn had disabled 3 Ascendant cruisers by dumping its hold of raw ore into their flight path, the simple rocks and metals playing havoc with their navigation systems. A research station in the Kuiper Belt had broadcast old electromagnetic frequencies that interfered with the aliens' quantum communications, causing an entire fleet to receive scrambled orders. The Ascendants built their entire civilization on advanced technology. Chen Wei observed, monitoring the growing network of resistance communications. They've forgotten how to deal with anything simpler. Every solution they try just makes them more vulnerable to our countermeasures. But victory hadn't come without cost. The room fell silent as they reviewed casualty reports. Colonies that hadn't adapted quickly enough had fallen. Ships that tried to fight the Ascendants with modern weapons had been easily defeated. They were winning, but the enemy was still overwhelmingly powerful. They're gathering their forces, Zara announced, studying radar readings collected from multiple outposts. The main fleet is consolidating around their command ship. Something big is coming. Sarah examined the patterns of enemy movement. The Ascendants were abandoning their distributed assault strategy, clustering their ships in massive formations. They're trying to overwhelm us with sheer firepower. Too many ships, too many weapons for simple countermeasures to work. Then we need to think bigger, Maya said quietly. All eyes turned to her. We've been fighting them with small-scale solutions, chemical reactions, basic physics, simple interference. But what if we took the same principles and scaled them up? Rodriguez's eyes lit up. The Europa colony's geothermal power plant. The one they ignored because it was too primitive to bother with. It's been powering this base for decades, using nothing but pressure differentials and water circulation. And the mineral processing centers in the outer belt, Chen Wei added, catching on. Their electromagnetic separators are practically ancient technology. But put them together. Sarah felt the plan forming. We could create the biggest disruption field ever attempted. Not trying to match their technology, but using basic forces of nature in ways they won't expect. The room erupted in activity as the plan took shape. Ships and colonies that had been operating independently began coordinating their efforts. The celestial nomad would lead a fleet of vessels, each modified with their own unique combinations of old and discarded technology. We'll only get one shot at this, Sarah told her assembled allies. The Ascendants think they've figured us out. They're expecting more of the same tricks. Instead, we're going to show them that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our advanced technology. It's our ability to take what worked in the past and transform it into something new. As the meeting concluded and preparations began, Sarah returned to her ship. The celestial nomad's hull now bore scars from their previous encounters, its once pristine paint job modeled with hasty repairs and improvised modifications. But to Sarah, it had never looked more beautiful. Ready for one more fight, old girl, she whispered, touching the worn metal of the ship's corridor. The steady thrum of ancient engines answered her, a sound that had never faltered, never failed, no matter how many times the odds seemed stacked against them. Victory of the obsolete. The assembled human fleet would have been considered embarrassing by modern military standards. Cargo ships with jury-rigged weapons, mining vessels trailing makeshift electromagnetic nets, research stations converted into interference broadcasters. At their heart, the celestial nomad led the charge, her hull now a patchwork of repairs and modifications. They faced the gathered might of the ascendant armada, hundreds of crystalline ships arranged in perfect geometric formations around their massive command vessel. The alien ships glowed with energy, their quantum weapons charged and ready. All ships reporting ready, Chen Wei announced, his voice steady despite the tension. Europa colony's geothermal plant is at maximum output. The belt facilities are standing by. Sarah took a deep breath, looking at each member of her crew. This isn't just about saving our colonies anymore. This is about proving that progress isn't just about moving forward. It's about remembering where you came from. Every step of human advancement, every piece of technology we developed, it all still has value. Ascendant Fleet is broadcasting, Zara reported. They're ordering our surrender. The alien message filled their speakers, still in that unnaturally perfect translation. Your resistance, while innovative, is ultimately futile. You have merely delayed the inevitable advancement of superior technology. Submit now, and we will preserve your primitive cultures as historical curiosities. Preserve this, Rodriguez muttered from engineering. All systems ready, Captain. Our little surprises are armed and waiting. Sarah nodded. Send the signal. All ships, execute Operation Thravac. The human fleet split apart, each vessel moving according to carefully planned trajectories calculated with nothing more complex than trigonometry and Newtonian physics. The Ascendant's quantum predictive systems, expecting sophisticated evasive patterns, struggled to track their seemingly random movements. The first phase began. Europa colony's massive geothermal plant, powered by the pressure of an entire moon's ocean, released its energy not as electricity, but as precisely calculated waves of heat and pressure that ripple through space. The ascended ship's sensitive quantum sensors, already strained to detect low-tech threats, were overwhelmed by the basic thermal interference. Belt facilities activating, Maya reported. Across the asteroid belt, dozens of electromagnetic separators, ancient machines used to process ore, engaged simultaneously. The overlapping magnetic fields created a web of interference that played havoc with the aliens' navigation systems. The Ascendant fleet's perfect formation began to waver. Ships collided as their automated systems received contradictory data. Others fired at sensor ghosts, their weapons finding only empty space. "They're launching their entire drone fleet," Zara warned. Thousands of autonomous units deployed from the alien ships, their AI systems searching for threats. "Perfect," Sarah smiled. Rodriguez, the engineer, threw a series of switches. Every human ship activated their secret weapon, modified cargo bay doors that released clouds of metallic dust. The particles, charged by the belt facility's magnetic fields, created a conductive web through space. The Ascendant drones, trying to transmit targeting data back to their ships, instead became conductors in an impromptu electrical circuit. Their sophisticated quantum processors overloaded from the simple current flowing through the makeshift network. But the aliens weren't finished. Their command ship, a behemoth of crystalline technology, began charging what appeared to be their ultimate weapon. Energy coursed through its structure, building to levels their sensors couldn't even measure. "All ships, clear the center," Sarah ordered. "Chen Wei, signal the colonies. Execute final phase." As the human fleet scattered, the colonies enacted their last, desperate plan. Every remaining piece of outdated technology, every backup system, every ancient generator and transmitter activated at once. The resulting cascade of low-tech energy signatures, electromagnetic waves, radio signals, and thermal emissions created a perfect storm of interference. The Ascendant command ship fired its weapon and missed completely. Their targeting systems, overwhelmed by the chaos of primitive energy signatures, couldn't distinguish friend from foe. The massive energy beam meant for the human fleet instead cut through their own formations. "Their fleet is losing cohesion," Zara reported, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. "Ships are going dark. Others are jumping away blindly. Their entire command and control network is collapsing." The Ascendant fleet, the most advanced military force humanity had ever encountered, was being defeated not by superior technology, but by its own inability to handle inferior technology. Their sophisticated systems, optimized for quantum warfare, couldn't adapt to the chaos of simple physics and basic electronics. "Send the final message," Sarah ordered. "All frequencies, all methods." Chen Wei transmitted their ultimatum using everything from radio waves to signal lights. "This is humanity's space. We built it step by step, technology by technology. Everything we created, from the simplest lever to the most advanced quantum computer, is part of who we are. You tried to make us forget our roots. Instead, you reminded us that true advancement isn't about replacing the old with the new. It's about building upon what came before." The Ascendant command ship, its crystalline surface now dulled by dust and interference, began to retreat. Across the sector, their remaining forces withdrew, their perfect formation shattered, their confidence broken by the revelation that their technological superiority had become their greatest weakness. As the alien fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, cheers erupted across the human ships and colonies. The celestial nomads' bridge crew embraced, their months of improvisation and determination finally paying off. Sarah stood at her viewport, watching the last traces of the Ascendant fleet vanish. The celestial nomad hummed around her, its hybrid of old and new technology working in perfect harmony. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in having the most advanced technology. It was in remembering and valuing every step of their technological journey. "Set course for home," she ordered, smiling as Rodriguez coaxed a bit more power from their old engines. "Let's go show everyone that obsolete is just another word for proven reliable." "Send a message to Earth Command," Sarah ordered. "Use the old radio frequencies, amplitude modulation, and wake up the rest of the crew. We're about to show these Ascendants just how dangerous primitive can be."